Okay, what, fifth time's the charm filming this intro? Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ella and I create video essays in hopes to spark important conversations not only between the people here online but hopefully people in real life. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around as today we will be diving deeper into a previous video that I did regarding art being inherently political and how art is resistance in a way. Art will always be political because it is meant to reflect on ourselves and on how society has lived, and the way a person exists and the way society moves is always going to be inherently political, and it's always going to be impacted by the political state that it's in. Portland Street Art Alliance said, "The human urge to make art is rooted in our desire to develop and share lasting narratives that reflect, inform, and construct our identities and societies. Art will always be a key piece in understanding how society runs." I do want to put a little bit of a disclaimer that I don't believe we should be holding artists, whether that's musicians, actresses, actors, whatever you may be, I don't believe we should be holding them to the same standard as politicians, but I do think the conversation is really interesting regarding what happens when you do put yourself in that public-facing role, especially when you get to such a height that there are always going to be some sort of parasocial relations, whether positive or negative, that's going to want you to speak on political issues or just issues in society, especially when so many people see art as inherently political. Just wanted to say that. So like I said, if this all sounds interesting to you, a discussion about the dominant culture, subculture, and how certain artists exist in this idea of the counterculture, like My Chemical Romance and Kneecap, please stick around because we are jumping right into it. Green tea today. Now, before we can get into this idea of subculture and counterculture, we obviously need to discuss the dominant culture as which they exist inside of. Now, this culture that I'm going to be discussing is obviously totally based on the fact that I'm American, I'm a white American girl, but the idea of the dominant culture is exactly what it sounds like. The cultural practice that dominates in a certain political or societal regime. It could be the language that's spoken, the practice religion, or even just community culture in a certain neighborhood. Despite the fact that America is a melting pot of cultures, as they say, the dominant culture being pushed specifically by dominant political parties is a white, heteronormative, and Christian-based religion culture. This is clearly shown not only just in the cutting of DEI initiatives, but in the total whitewashing of history in schools. I know when I was growing up, which obviously I haven't been in middle schools in a minute, but they would quite literally tell you that, oh, the Pilgrims, they were eating and making food with the Indians. They called them Indians. And they all got along so well and they were best friends. And yeah, that's not what happened. History is only becoming more and more whitewashed. I saw TikTok. It was, if I can find it, I will put it up here, but it said something along the lines of, privilege is your history being the main curriculum and mine is an elective. And I mean, is that not true? You would think American culture would mean every American person, but it doesn't really, especially not in American history. It's white American history, and it's a positively spun white American history. It's a history where America has always been the good guys. But in a dominant culture, there will always be subcultures. And within subcultures, there will always be countercultures. While the definition of these two things are pretty ever-changing and ever-evolving, I see that the general idea remains relatively the same. Both sub and countercultures, they go against what they see as a limiting and constricting way of life within the dominant culture. But it's not just a hobby, it's not just something you do. Specifically, I'd say in the early 2000s, before any iPhones and social media really took hold, subcultures were a big hub for community. As cultural critic George McKay says, subcultures feed the countercultures. The range of subcultural movements, from hippie through punk through rave and others, contributes to the increasingly resistant lifestyle or perspective of counterculture. Subculture is a smaller group within the dominant culture, but they're still able to exist within it. It's pretty diverse, broad. It's pretty broad at times. You have book fans, and then you have science fiction, and then you have fantasy fans, and then historical fiction fans. These are all their own little subcultures. You all may share something in common, but it doesn't always mean you're actively challenging the dominant culture. And as George McKay said, that subculture feeds into the counterculture because they are similar in a lot of ways. They are a minority group within the main popular culture, but it's important to differentiate that they have very different practices. Counterculture actively challenges the dominant regime, the dominant culture. Oftentimes, they even engage themselves outside of the traditional political parties. The civil rights movement is a really good example of a counterculture that was able to get stuff done, one. Two, was able to become far more mainstream, and they succeeded in changing a lot of the culture. On top of that, the culture, they had a lot of political changes. In Seisman and O'Brien's work discussing this idea of subculture and counterculture, they said, countercultures pose an explicit challenge to the existing order of things. Put bluntly, their goal is to change the world. While there are a lot of people in the punk subculture, not everybody that participates and that dresses punk, they may not actively engage in the counterculture aspect of it, which I do find, in my opinion, we see a lot more of these days, especially with social media. It's more so people are just dressing because they like the look of it, they like the aesthetic of it, which is not inherently bad. They're not doing anything evil by just dressing because they enjoy the look of punk clothing. But I do find it intriguing, to say the least, if somebody were to get up and say, I'm punk, but they've never done any sort of research behind the history of it, which I don't want to put out there that every person online that dresses punk is just cosplaying as a punk person, because I don't know them. If they say they're punk, whatever. But, it's the ever regurgitated no one has personal style thing anymore. They're just wearing aesthetics. But I do think there was a really good point at the center of it all, But as I said, punk is both subculture and counterculture. Punk is a very well-known subculture, at least I feel like it is. Maybe it's because I have friends who are kind of active in that area that I'm more exposed to it. I feel like it's a very popular subculture. Someone please go through and count how many times I've said the word culture and its variations in this video, please. To a very basic definition of the idea of punk, think the fast and aggressive music of the 70s and 80s. Very broad definition, by the way, because there's so much more depth to it, to the ideas and the attitudes behind the people of punk. Patti Smith says, "To me, punk rock is the freedom to create. Freedom to be successful, freedom to not be successful, freedom to be who you are. It's freedom." Alexander B. Wolk in The Philosophy of Punk says, "Punk is a reaction to an experience in a raw form." He continues on, "Punk is the raw energy of the souls trying to find their place to belong, or more accurately, be able to be okay with not belonging. Punk is the do-it-yourself, the thrift stores, and the zines. But most importantly, for the counterculture, punk is anti-establishment, anti-nationalism. A lot of people see punk people as, I don't know if unconventional is the word, but maybe weird. In a world of so much weirdness where everybody is so different, what is conventional and what is unconventional? There's nothing, because we've decided what's weird and what's not weird. We've decided what's normal and not normal. Punk was going very strong in the 1980s as it became a very prominent radical challenger to the politics of Ronald Reagan, essentially. The cause of every other issue we have in this country. My Chemical Romance is a really good example of a true punk band that exists in the counterculture. Now, I remember when they announced this tour, as I have some friends who are big fans of MCR, but I've never listened to their music, so I didn't look into it at all until I received a comment on my Art is Resistance video regarding their new tour that they're on, or finished recently, I don't know when it was. Whenever I started to read up on the storyline that they were telling during this show, I was like, wow, I would have liked to see that, actually. I would have really liked to see that. This tour had a set list of 25 songs, and the first part of the set was a full playthrough of the 2006 album, The Black Parade. During its initial release, The Black Parade was telling the story of a patient or The Patient, as he's nearing the end of his life. As MCR started this tour, the storyline behind the album began to shift. As I said, the first part of the set is a total playthrough of this album. MCR is in character as the Black Parade. They are a band that is traveling through a USSR-inspired fictional dictatorship. It tells the story of the decline and the eventual nuclear wipeout of Drag, which is the fictional dictatorship nation that they hail from. Lead singer Gerard Way, he represents a civilian that once blindly followed his nation but has slowly become radicalized. Lin Yang, an MCR fan who attended the show, explained their experience. The show featured several pointed political messages, involving the audience in the commentary through emotions and reactions linked to the songs. Welcome to the Black Parade, one of the most famous anthems of the 2000s, is recontextualized as a speech of nationalist fervor, delivered by Way to the crowd on a podium. Surrounding screens projected fake propaganda footage, mimicking old footage of Soviet speeches. If there was a song to unify a crowd at an MCR concert, it's this one. This recontextualization asks the audience to reflect on our own role as both spectators and participants in an increasingly authoritarian and decreasingly democratic state, and how easily nationalism can obscure the degradation of democracy until it's too late. 4 elected officials and dissenters of the dictator are marched onto stage with sacks over their heads and executed. The band asked the audience to vote with signs handed out before the show on whether to keep them in office or not, rather to shoot or not to shoot the 4 prisoners. Their crime? Questioning the longevity of the grand immortal dictator. During the Seattle show, the people voted to execute, while in the San Francisco show, they opted to keep them alive. But Way received a call from the higher-ups and executed them anyways. This truly makes the audience realize that they hold absolutely zero power. Yeah, they did the vote, but it didn't mean anything. The vote is a total sham, exposing the greatest truth of all. Governments lie. Yang continues on, asking the audience to vote for the execution of strangers under the guise of democracy sent a clear message that is uncomfortably relevant in today's increasingly authoritarian United States. Throughout the show, MCR comments on how authoritarians manipulate the fear of death by promising a solution. And finally, Yang touches on the way MCR made a pretty eerie prediction in their show. The band seems to be commenting on the role disillusionment plays in political radicalization and the inevitability of dictatorships to inspire political violence against the regime. While the rest of the show felt like an exaggerated commentary on the present, the last segment of the show was a chilling prediction of the future if authoritarianism and fascism continue to spread across the globe. All I know is when I was reading these descriptions from the MCR show, I was getting chills. I was like, whoa, any punk people watching this, let me know. I don't even know. Just leave your thoughts below. I love hearing about the punk counterculture and subculture because it's always existed, I feel like. Whether it's been louder or more so in the shadows, I feel like it's always been there. So yeah, if you're watching this and you're punk, leave your thoughts below about the MCR show. 1, 2, about your time as a punk person. Sorry, that sounds really weird, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying when I say I want to hear your thoughts and your experiences. Maybe that's the better word. I did read about punk in the UK though, because I was watching Jordan Teresa's video about the romanticization of old money and the old money aesthetic, and how that trend never really took hold in the UK, because in America we believe in the myth of the American dream, thinking that we can reach that level of money, while in the UK the way she kind of described it was, this is a country that's centuries old, like way older than America, right? And so they've seen time and time again how the class divide is very real. One, very real, and harms people, hurts people, and is the cause and root of all evil, because money is the root of all evil. And in the 1970s, when punk was really big, England was going through a recession, and many kids were seeing their parents lose their jobs and possibly even just losing everything they own, while they could still very clearly see the upper class flaunting their wealth. To put it plainly, I feel class consciousness is way more common in the UK, while in America we still have a belief that we can reach that level of wealth, which the only way you can reach those insane levels of wealth is by having blood money. I have seen a lot about the group Kneecap all over my For You page recently following their explosive Coachella performance. This is an Irish rap band that raps exclusively in the endangered Irish language Gaelic. They came together as a group about 8 or 9 years ago, I believe. It was the night before the Irish Language Act March in Belfast, and Mowgli Bap was out spray painting with a friend. It was the night before the Irish Language Act March in Belfast, and Mowgli Bap was out spray painting with a friend, where they had written the word Cierta on a bus stop, which is Gaelic for rights. Unfortunately, the police arrived, and while Mowgli Bap was able to escape, his friend was not and was taken into custody. This friend sat in the cell the entire night, refusing to speak to the police and anything but Gaelic. And so he sat there the entire night waiting for a translator. Essentially, this incident is what prompted the group to create their debut song, Cierta, which people really liked, and here they are today. Kneecap really focuses heavily on the importance of international solidarity when it comes to the genocide in Gaza. Due to the nearly 800-year British colonialism that the Irish had to face, they really understand this importance of international solidarity, and they really push that in these shows, and that is why they're so vocal about it. During this Coachella performance, they chanted phrases like Free Palestine, and they ended their show with pro-Palestinian and anti-Israeli projections on the screen. One of these statements read, "Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. It is being enabled by the U.S. government, who arm and fund Israel despite their war crimes." Following this performance, the band fell under really heavy scrutiny, even calling for their visas to be revoked by people like Sharon Osbourne. Some of the members called it a smear campaign. While I was editing, I found a statement made by Kneecap from this YouTube channel that I wanted to read for you all. "Since our statements at Coachella exposing the ongoing genocide against the Palestinian people, we have faced a coordinated smear campaign. For over a year, we have used our shows to call out the British and Irish government's complicity in war crimes. The recent attacks against us, largely emanating from the U.S., are based on deliberate distortions and falsehoods. We are taking action against several of these malicious efforts. The reason Kneecap is being targeted is simple. We are telling the truth, and our audience is growing. Those attacking us want to silence criticism of a mass slaughter. They weaponize false accusations of anti-Semitism to distract, confuse, and provide cover for genocide. We do not give a what religion anyone practices. We know there are massive numbers of Jewish people outraged by this genocide just as we are. What we care about is that governments of the countries we perform in are enabling some of the most horrific crimes of our lifetimes, and we will not stay silent. No media spin will change this. Our only concern is the Palestinian people, the 2,000 murdered children and counting. The young people at our gigs see through the lies. They stand on the side of humanity and justice, and that gives us great hope." Kneecap. Which I can see is real. Paying for a smear campaign. They pay for so many influencers to just come to their place that I wouldn't be surprised. BBC asked the group for a statement on the show, and they said, "Statements aren't aggressive. Murdering 20,000 children is, though." Following this Coachella performance, there were multiple videos that resurfaced from previous concerts of group member Mokara supporting the Lebanese group of Hezbollah. Videos show the group members shouting, "Up Hamas, up Hezbollah," and "The only good Tory is a dead Tory," which Tory refers to the British center-right Conservative Party. He was caught waving this flag around, the Hezbollah flag, and in the UK, Hezbollah is categorized as a terrorist organization. And so they slapped him with a terror charge. Okay, British government, UK government, just low-key proving him correct. It's cool, though. There is an argument about whether the charge should be thrown out, though, due to the statute of limitations, but Judge Paul Goldspring won't come out with a decision about that until September 25th, which today is September 5th, so we still got 20 days. Following the terror charge, Kneecap saw multiple concerts canceled. Despite this, their Glastonbury was set to go ahead as planned now. BBC said that they would not be live streaming the performance as they needed to ensure that they would be within guidelines, but they did make it available to watch later. During this set, Kneecap essentially used it as a way to, like I said, double, triple, quadruple down on their stance in support of Palestine. The group also led the crowd in a "Fuck Keir Starmer" chant, who is the Prime Minister of the UK. The British police have actually opened an investigation into this performance, So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the entirety of the group hit with something. And that should be very telling to you. The fact that they're investigating this at all, when we know that the IDF is the real terror organization. This form of public art, people like Kneecap getting onto a stage with this huge of a crowd to make statements like this is how change gets made. And I hate using Taylor Swift as the example all the time, but I only do it because I grew up such a fan of her. I love Taylor Swift and I still want to love her so bad, but it is hard to see the silence from her, especially when she made such a big deal about supporting Biden and backing Biden in the last election. She's very selective with when she wants to do it, when it's beneficial for her. Because imagine, Kneecap is a big group, but imagine if during one of Taylor Swift's stadium tours, she made a big political statement. That would get eyes on it. That's what they say, right? Eyes on Rafah, eyes on Gaza. We need to be witness to what is going on. And that is why there's a literal civilian flotilla on their way to break the blockade right now. So clearly the government isn't going to do anything. They're just going to support it. This public form of art reaches such a wide variety of people. The Portland Art Association said, public art provides a space for representation, a way to expand reach and amplify voices. If the embedded message is particularly relevant and powerful, people will take photos of it. It will end up on the internet and in social media, where its reach is almost infinite, and it will live on forever, even if it's removed from public space. And if social media is compromised, humans are resourceful. They will turn to what they have, things like graffiti, which, I took a class my sophomore year of college discussing the idea of subcultures and music and how they exist in America. And that was my first introduction to the idea. And let me tell you, it was a great class. Like, it low-key changed my life. So, professor, if you're watching this, shout out you. And that is where I was taught about the origins, essentially, of graffiti and how it's not just people defacing public property, because that's what it's been painted as. Graffiti is its own form of art. It's its own way of sending political messages. And people may find it disruptive, obviously. Like, technically, you are defacing public property, but statements in terms of political statements and wanting to make a political change or societal change have always been disruptive. They have always been disruptive. All I know is I just remember sitting through this class and him discussing people's tags for graffiti, discussing the meaning behind it, discussing the messages behind it, and I was flabbergasted. I was so intrigued. I said, this is so wow. It was just such a new perspective on the world, and it really shows you that everything has its own story, you know? Sorry, a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to say that. Portland Art Association says again, in uncertain times, when economic, social, and political systems fail to support society, art and graffiti serve a vital function of communicating grassroots ideas, sympathies, and demands. Subculture and counterculture rely so heavily on face-to-face interactions and experiences. And that's why I worry a little bit for younger generations, as they have been, addicted to devices since before they were even conscious. They were handed a phone to be quiet at the age of 6 months old. Phones are, all great and wonderful until they're not. Obviously, there's a good use for them. They are a good way to do the initial meetings of people. You can keep connected when you're not with them, text them. But they weren't meant to replace our everyday interactions. They weren't supposed to do that. And obviously, not everyone is addicted to their devices like this. But young kids, they hang out with friends, but I feel like they just come home and they scroll and they play their video games and they don't... It is that dang phone. It's the dang phone! It's that phone and it's capitalism. It's phone and capitalism. And so parents, this week, or in the coming months, I'm challenging you to challenge your kids. While summer is basically over, so you're not really signing up for summer reading programs, if your kids don't have a library card, make sure they have a library card. Make sure they read 2 books a month. People on TikTok, they may tell you you're abusive for making your kid read 2 books a month. I promise you you're not. That's not abusive. Genuinely, take your kids' phones at night. As somebody who is 23 now, and I've grown up the last decade plus with a phone, I had basically uninterrupted access to whatever I wanted on my phone. They may hate you in the moment, but I promise you, they don't need to be on their phone that much. Sorry that this topic of counterculture and subculture has just, once again, turned into this get kids off devices and get them outside, please? So wow, do all of our issues seem to boil down to the same few main ones? I apologize that the last few bits of this video have been a little bit of a tangent for me, but I have a very, very busy weekend, and so I won't have a lot of time to film, so I need to get ahead of my filming, which I'm really happy about. Actually, I'm gonna be really ahead on my editing too. Crazy. But I just want to say, hope you guys enjoy this video. I really enjoyed researching the MCR show and Kneecap some more. It's really interesting how the more videos I do, the more I seem to actually enjoy the research aspect and taking my time to do it. It's very interesting to me. So please be on the lookout for more videos, as I'm really enjoying this. But yeah, we've always used art to reflect on our history, on our lives, and the way we live. And so for me, that just makes art inherently political, as politics are going to shape every aspect of our lives. So yeah, this was just a little bit of a random video, maybe a little bit of a just offering some information I found, just trying to educate myself some more. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any thoughts, please leave them down below. If you have any more artists that you would like me to cover, or if you feel like I really forgot someone, please leave them down below. I'm always open to hearing. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.